Good afternoon and welcome to Virtual Coffee. My name is Carrie Sconza. I am the host for today's Virtual Coffee for What You're Really Saying with Julie Puzan, the Women Veterans Employment Coordinator. Just a few housekeeping issues before we start, and we'll wait. A few more people will log in. If you can hear me, there is a hand icon in your box. Just check that if you can hear me. It's like raising your hand. Sometimes you can see them, sometimes you can't. Thanks, Teresa. If you can, Aline, if you can hear me, go ahead and click that hand icon. If you can hear me, raise your hand. Thanks, Aline. Welcome. We'll just wait a few minutes for other people to show up. Sometimes people are running late. You know, it's right after lunch, so we'll give them a minute.
Just one.
Just one. Okay, let's get started. And everyone, when they join in, will just address that when it happens. Again, my name is Carrie Sconza. Today's presenter is Julie Puzan. What You're Really Saying, Military to Civilian Communication. We'll go through her slide. Julie will go through her slide presentation. And if you would like to ask questions, ask at any time. What we'll do is we'll stop at each slide. And then after each slide, we'll take questions and we'll make sure that we answer your questions. And I'd like to introduce Julie Puzan. And we have Anna Baker, the Women Veterans Program Manager here. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
To Virtual Coffee.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Go ahead, Julie. Take it away.
Right. Okay, well, good afternoon. Is everybody awake? Hopefully so. I want to start out by saying if at any time you have questions, and this isn't just like a general question, but a question about maybe a scenario or something, please type it in. I know that whenever I go to seminars and conferences, I like to actually ask the people who are doing the presentations, advice on certain situations. So please, definitely, if that happens and you have something and you think, oh, I remember this one time, what could I have done or something like that, please type it in and we'll get to it. We like to have very free flow, informative, but informal presentations. So again, type it in and we'll get to it, and hopefully, I'm not saying we'll definitely have an answer, but I think between the three of us we might be,
I'm pretty sure
able to come up with
answer.
something. I like to talk, so I can definitely give some talking advice. So getting into what you're really saying, this piece of the Confidence Outside the Uniform material is designated towards communications. So all types of communication, we're going to talk about everything from speaking up in meetings to presentations to confrontation, which is everybody's favorite, right? Everybody loves confrontation.
Try to avoid it.
Yeah. So keep your communication style in mind when returning to the civilian culture.
Just let me know when you want me to.
People walk and talk differently in the military. What is normal in the military to us may seem unusual to a civilian. So probably for those of you who have served, as you get out and you're in the workplace, have you ever had, been talking and had somebody cock their head to the side and look at you like you're crazy? Happens to me all the time. So there were some things that I've just kind of learned, and we're going to kind of start with that. So going to the first real slide, communicating with civilians. That's really what this slide is geared towards. When you get out of the military, I don't know about everybody else, but I was a bomb loader, which if you attended the first one, I like to shout that out because it is a little bit different. So going from the flight line and being a maintainer for 6 years, and then going into being a social work major, and then working in a government agency has all been quite different. And I have learned quite a bit throughout this journey, this last 5 years with TVC. So some of my key tips are up here. When communicating with civilians, be genuine and respectful. It seems like it's a very obvious thing, However, sometimes, let's say, going to the last one, respect opinions different than your own. Let's say somebody has a different opinion than yours, maybe about being in the military, right? So you start working with a bunch of civilians, some of them are anti-military. So for us, it's very easy to get defensive and maybe take it to the next level. We get a little heated, but just remember that everybody is entitled to their own opinion, and even if you don't agree with it, you should still respect that. This is something, it sounds hilarious, but my husband would be so embarrassed. But as you listen to these webinars, I talk about him a lot too, because he's a veteran too. So it's not just women that face these problems. Men do too. And I'll never forget him telling me he went to the Art Institute of Austin. That's where he went to school for his bachelor's degree. And he was in class with a bunch of 21-year-old, little ritzy kids. I say kids because, he was older, probably like in his 29 to 30s. And someone said something, the military topic came up, and his students immediately, because most of them, their parents paid for everything, most of them, and so they were instantly, the majority of the class started jumping on the bandwagon about hating the military, and especially the Iraq topic, and he is an Iraqi veteran, and he came home and told me about it and how irritated he got, and he kind of blew up in class, and I said, I know that it's very frustrating, but you have to understand that they have their own opinion, and while you don't agree with it, you have to respect it. So that's where that be genuine and respectful really comes into play. Watch your military lingo. We tend to, as veterans, we tend to talk military. We talk and walk military. If I get around somebody who was on the flight line, I instantly am, using the lingo that we use. We called the airplanes, we called them jets, all the different types of things. So keep an eye on that. Keep the slang under control.
I've got a funny story. So the opposite. I had a federal job after I retired from the military, and so we were all military, and they hired a civilian. And so she was going through orientation, and at the end of the day, she took me aside, because it was a new job for me too. So we were both going through orientation, and she took me aside at the end of the day. She goes, I don't know what any of you were talking about.
It's true, yeah. That's why, and this, I like to talk about, one of my best friends in college, one of my few friends in college, because, Bob loaded to social worker, they didn't really understand me a lot, but she would come over to the house, and my husband was still military, and so all of our military friends would be over, and we all worked together, so the lingo was flying, the acronyms were flying. And finally she said, I'm just going to go, Julie. And I said, oh, are you not having fun? She said, I don't know what y'all are talking about. So it really does happen. And being, if you're in the workplace, you may be the only veteran, or you could be in an agency like ours where there's several veterans. So it's always remember to be courteous and just try to avoid using that, because they have no idea what you're talking about. Another tip that I like to really stress, especially for women, is be mindful of your tone and directness. So when you're talking, I personally like direct, straightforward, but some people can be a little sensitive to that. So if you're talking to someone and let's say they throw out a project idea, oh, well, why don't we do this? And in your mind you're thinking, well, why the heck would we do that? That's stupid. That may come out of your mouth. So just be mindful of that, because you don't want to, even though to us we're just thinking, no, we're not trying to be mean, it's just what we're thinking. Be mindful of that, because being direct can often lead to you being known as, the B word, or rude, or mean. I've been called mean a couple times. If I think something isn't going to be right, I'll say it, and I don't think that's the way we should do that. Maybe we should do it a different way. That doesn't really make sense. Maybe I should leave off that doesn't really make sense, because that's not being very courteous to them. So even though in my mind that's what I'm thinking. So just kind of keep that in mind. Does anybody have any questions about this, or have anything they're dealing with that maybe being from the military to civilian workforce you've noticed? Anna, have you noticed anything? We're gonna pull you into
like
this.
a shotgun, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I didn't realize this, because I guess I'd been out of the military for quite a few years, but when I did go into the corporate environment, I was told that my tone and my directness were an issue, and that it sometimes ruffled people's feathers. And I think for women especially, there's a gray area there.
Definitely.
Because most men, when they speak to each other, they're direct. They say exactly what they mean, and they mean what they say, and they don't want a lot of fluff. Just
Exactly.
the facts, ma'am. Just the facts.
Yep.
And that works a lot better when you're dealing with men, but when you're dealing with women, I've found, and I don't want to generalize, but they prefer a softer tone. If they're not from the military environment, or they're not children of parents who were in the military, and they're not used to that, they tend to like a little bit softer tone. And in the corporate environment, and maybe some of you have actually been through some of this training, but it's soft skills training. It's how to communicate. Yeah, how to communicate using soft skills. So it is something to be mindful of. And a lot of it goes back to knowing your audience. Who are you talking to? If you're talking to somebody else who's in the military, or they come from a military family, they're going to be more open to your directness. But if not, then softer tone, and more politeness, I guess, especially when dealing in email, or hi, how are you? How's your family? And then get into okay, what is it you're trying to get done, or what do you need answered?
Yes, and I was definitely going to say, definitely keep an eye on emails, because that's where they can really, they're very misconceiving already. So a lot of times you may mean something, but if it's written down, they can't hear your warmth in your voice, they can't see your facial expressions. So if it's a very direct email, you can be taken it out of context as rude or abrasive. So I've been told that as well when I was a claims counselor. So it's something that I'm always mindful of too. If I'm not writing an email to someone extremely high up, I'm going to probably throw a smiley face in there. That way they know. But I don't recommend doing that, depending on your environment. Everybody here knows me, and I'm always smiling. So anyways, there's just some good examples of how the military and civilian culture are different with communication styles. So let's go to the next slide. So if y'all think of something later, referencing back to that first slide, just write it in and we'll go ahead and answer it. But we're going to go on to speaking in a professional setting. So when I talk about this, I'm really referring to meetings, presentations, interviews, that type of environment. We're going to go over public speaking in a minute, and some of these tips can also be used for public speaking, but this is really a more intimate setting. Maybe you're in an office meeting. Maybe you're getting up to, high up in the food chain in a corporation, and as you look around the table, right, we're at a table that has, about 10 chairs, you're probably going to see less and less women as you move up. You may only be the only woman in there. So there's some things that, these are some tips that we've gathered from women, all kinds of women veterans, all kinds of women who, that's what they go by. And as far as being taken seriously in meetings, or giving good presentations, or doing good interviews. So the first thing definitely is to know the purpose. Why are you speaking? Are you giving an idea? Are you doing an interview? Are you presenting a new project? Know your purpose before you open your mouth, because that's going to help you tailor what you're going to say. Say what you mean and avoid hinting. So I don't like to generalize either. I definitely don't want to stereotype women, but this is something that women have a stigma of doing. Instead of coming out and saying straightforward what they mean, they kind of hint around about it. Well, I think that this might be a good thing. Well, maybe it won't be a good, just say it. Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? Why? And the reason also to avoid hinting is kind of ties into the next one. Do not let your male counterparts leave you out or speak over you. So let's say you're in one of those fancy meetings we were talking about, and you're the only woman in this, board meeting, and it's a really, really high up, very nice executive meeting. and they're looking for ideas, and you're kind of dancing around, but you don't actually say what you mean. If your male counterpart picks it up and says, "Oh man, that's a good idea," and he starts speaking over you, who do you think is going to get the credit for that idea? They're going to think it was his idea. So that's kind of that's another reason that we're talking about, don't do the hinting, just come straight forward. Practice what you're going to say. I practice everything before I say it. I mean, not normal conversation, but if I'm going to go into an interview, I practiced the night before. Before I did this webinar, I was downstairs practicing what I was going to say. It's a good way to make you feel confident when you're doing it, because you feel like it's familiar and not foreign to you. So it makes you a little more comfortable. Have a strong voice. I always like to give an example in this section because there was a girl, and she actually took my place as a claims counselor when I moved into this position. The problem was she had interviewed for another position previously a couple times actually, and they were claims counselors positions. And they loved her, and they knew her, and she worked as a work study at the location that I was at. But when she went into her interview, the higher up on the panel he didn't know her personality, and he didn't know her except for in the interview. And when she was in the interview, she would talk like this, and she was very sweet and smiley, and the other lead interviewer didn't think that she could handle a veteran if a veteran started getting kind of rough and mean with her. And that's just what she portrayed. But I had seen her, and this girl was in the Army. She was still in the reserves. She had done her active duty time and was in the reserves. And when she was in uniform, she was one of the most confident women ever. But there was something about, I guess because she was uncomfortable, when she would get in that interview, she would compensate maybe by doing that real soft voice, and they just were completely turned off by it. So we practiced. I pulled her in my office before I left because I knew that I was going to be coming to this position. It would be open. And we practiced, and I said, "So-and-so, you've got to put your big girl pants on and get your voice out there because your voice is too weak." And she practiced and practiced, and she got the job. And they loved her. She was great at it. So that's just a really good example about how voice can portray confidence. Body language, you could be the most unconfident person in the world, but if you act like you're confident by doing a strong voice and having great eye contact and posture and owning that room, nobody would ever know. It's basically called fake it till you make it, right? How many of you have heard that expression? I love that expression. When I got out of the military, a lot of people do this. When you get out, you kind of lose your identity, so you lose your confidence because you don't know who you are. And the first couple of times I had to do interviews and presentations, oh, I hated it. And I was so uncomfortable, and I hated eye contact. I hated eye contact. And I knew that that was one of my weaknesses, so I practiced. And now I'm like, y'all can't see me because we're, but I'm across the table looking at Carrie and but it was something that I really had to work on, just like the other girl had to work on her voice. And by doing that, I started to feel more confident, and now I have no problem doing any type of presentation, interviews. I like doing them. It's just kind of like a way to, faking it till you make it is a way to pretend you have confidence until you start getting that confidence back. Because after you do it for so long, it's going to come back naturally. So these are some tips. Do y'all have anything to add? When it comes to like this
when you have that identity and you have that uniform on, and you have rank, any type of rank really, and people treat you a certain way. I mean, civilians, when you're in uniform, will treat you a different way than when you're in civilian uniform or civilian clothes. So I can see that, when I retired and I had to buy a civilian wardrobe, I made sure that I had comfortable shoes, good shoes, and that I was confident in what I wore and comfortable. And if I was more comfortable in what I was wearing, then I was more confident going out there and speaking. So that's just kind of my take on that.
Yeah, that's a wonderful tip. And a lot of times I'll talk about that. I don't have it in my slideshow today, but that's a great tip. And for those that have missed the first part to the webinar series we're doing, the Dress Right Dress, you can, if you want, email us and we'll send you the link, but you can watch it, and then we give you tips on things that you can wear to like an interview or to a meeting or something. Or that's a really great tip.
You can find it on YouTube. So if you go to Texas Veterans on YouTube, you can check out our archived virtual coffees, and that's where you'll find Dress Right Dress.
Yeah, so great tip. Did you have any?
Yeah, so I'll add a little bit to that. With regards to a strong voice, if you naturally, I don't, but if you naturally have a soft voice and you're in a large room, or you know you're going to be in a large room, make sure whoever's facilitating that event knows that you need a microphone.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You want people to hear what you have to say.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be afraid to ask. There's nothing wrong with being soft-spoken, but if you are soft-spoken and you're going to be in a setting, that's a large room, and you're going to need to be speaking to people who may be in the back of the room, you want them to hear what you have to say. The other thing I would say with regards to owning the room is depending on the size of the room. As an example, I was in a fairly large room last week giving a presentation to the State Agency Council, and it had a podium. The room was pretty long. I think the room probably sat 50 to 60 women, and what I did is, this helps because I have a pretty strong voice, is I actually got out from behind the podium and walked to each side of the room, not pacing, because that's going to look like the tennis ball and people are it's going to make them dizzy. But I would walk to one side of the room and I would look at those ladies, and then I would walk to the other side of the room and I'd look at those ladies in the eye. So make sure you take advantage of the space that you have, and if you're not sure, then just kind of be prepared. Think about what the potential would be based on maybe what the audience, don't ever be afraid to ask how large your audience is going to be, and then plan around that audience.
When I first started speaking, I was a junior sailor. I was giving anti-terrorism briefs, and I was terrified. And and it's true, the more you do it, the more you feel more, comfortable, and you figure out strategies. But I would, to get over that, I would go into my brief early and talk to the people in the front rows.
Oh, yeah, that helps.
And so you kind of feel like you get to know them. Mm-hmm. And then I would kind of treat everyone as a game. Like, what worked this time? And what's going to work this time, and how do I get them engaged? What am I going to do differently? But own it. Like, this is my room, and I'm going to own this, and this is how I'm going to strategize. This is how I'm going to do it. A lot.
Yeah. See, those are all some extra awesome tips. So keep that in mind. And then a few slides down the road, we're going to get more into the public speaking, but those are really good tips for both in like a smaller, intimate setting or a big public setting. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we're going to tackle some confrontation real quick. All right, we're going to tackle confrontation.
We're going to confront
confrontation. Okay, confrontation. When everybody hears the word, nearly everybody, people always have a negative stigma about it. They always think it's a negative thing. But in reality, it's not. So what I did was I spent a lot of this morning just kind of Googling around confrontation definitions, and these are some of the aspects that I found about confrontation, and I thought it was really important to put them in this presentation because as you look up here, you don't see anything negative on there. So a meeting of persons face to face, okay? I mean, I guess you can confront over the phone, but if you're really going to truly do some confrontation, it should be face to face. An open conflict of opposing ideas, forces, and etc. Open is a good word. We like open, right? It's not closed. It's not one-sided. It's an open conversation. And then a bringing together of ideas, themes, etc. for comparison. So none of those things has a negative ring to it. So when you think about confrontation, the way to think about it is that you're just opposing somebody else's view or idea, but it doesn't mean that you think it's stupid or that you think they're dumb. It means that you don't agree with the way something should be done or what is going on, and you're offering another solution to the table. If you do it in a negative way, then it's going to become a negative confrontation. But if you do it in an open, positive way, there's nothing wrong with confrontation. Confrontation is good because when you confront something, that's how change happens, and change is a good thing. So let's go to the next slide. So we're going to give you some tips today about handling confrontation, and this is some things that you can do to handle it appropriately. Do not fear it. Again, it's a good thing. It can be a good thing. It's the way that you handle confrontation that can be a bad thing. So if you yourself keep it positive and open, and if the person that you're opposing in the confrontation starts to take it to the next level or get rude, just address it and say, you know, I'm trying to have an open discussion with you. I'm really trying to give you my opinion and some ideas. I don't want this to be a negative conversation. Be respectful. You always want to be respectful. Because if you're on the other end of the spectrum and you're constantly yelling at people or being mean, you're going to get that. You're going to be known as that person, right? They're going to know that they can never bring an idea to you, especially if you're in a manager or supervisory role. Don't be that person. Be respectful, be kind, always be open to other people's opinions. Otherwise, your people aren't going to want to come talk to you about something. Address straightforward and avoid hinting. We kind of talked about this before. Don't dance around something. If you've got a problem with something, or if you want to openly confront something, just get straight to the point. You know, if you want to do the sandwich method, positive, negative, positive, whatever, but make sure you get to the point of the conversation. This is a big one for everybody, not just women. I mean, women too, but everybody. Keep emotion out of the picture. If you look at the picture on the bottom left, I mean, there's like high emotion in that picture, right? That's why I liked it. I thought it was a pretty neat picture because I think when people hear the word confrontation, they think of stuff like that, and they think about just a brawl or a duel. It's not a duel. It's, you know, it's two mature, hopefully mature adults having conversation about changing something. So keep the emotion out of the picture. Try to be, you know, look at the people on the right. I don't know if they're having a confrontation, but maybe they are. And the guy, he doesn't look too happy, but he's got a smile on his face. It may be fake, but it's fine. He's trying. So just remember that. Keep emotion out of the picture. You don't want to go in there. You don't, you know, try really hard not to cry. That's something that women face all the time. I mean, we've seen so many, and we've got an emotional intelligence type webinar coming up. I'm excited about that. It's called Keep Your Emotions in Check. So I'm really going to give some good tips during that webinar. But you know, some things you can do. I read a really cool article that said if you're, let's say you're like in a meeting and you're getting a personnel plan or something like that, and obviously that's not a good meeting for you to be in, and you're not happy about it. Something that you can do to keep from crying if you feel yourself starting to tear up is, and this is just a simple little tip that I've tried and it actually works. So our first reaction, well, my first reaction when my eyes start to tear up is to look up or down. But what they say is that when you do that, you're helping the tears gather. So if you look to the left or the right, it's supposed to help the tears go away. And I tried it and it works, I promise. So I mean, that's like a little tip you could do. Try to not get too mad and frustrated. Try to breathe, keep it nice and calm. And then when you use powerful body language, be careful. I don't mean like, you know, tower over somebody and be like the people on the bottom right picture or bottom left picture. But you want to definitely make eye contact. You want to have that stronger voice, and you want to keep that, you know, if at the end, give a good handshake, whatever. Just make sure you're not overpowering. Powerful, but not overpowering.
So you don't want to point him in the chest?
Nope.
No.
Nope, don't do that. Or loom over them. I mean, I'm 5'2½", so I can't do that. But you want to loom down on that person. So hopefully these will give you some good tips on handling confrontation. If y'all have any questions, maybe in the past you're wondering how you could have handled the situation, type it in and we'll give you some advice on it. I don't know if it'll be right, but we'll try. Okay, so did y'all want to add anything? Because this is kind of a taboo subject, so I definitely think it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I think the other thing to consider and to remember is that there are going to be plenty of people who are not going to be following these rules. Yep, right. So you may be in a situation where you're trying to be open, you're trying to be respectful, and they're coming after you. They're coming after your ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Tr- and as hard as it is, try not to take it personal.
Yes.
You know, one of the things that I try to do is I try to say to myself, I have no idea what is going on in this person's life. I don't know why they're behaving this way. So maybe we should just say, okay, well, maybe we should take this up later, or, just make a note of it. Okay, I hear you. Maybe do a parking lot thing where you can put people's, if they've got a serious concern about your idea or anybody else's, you don't want to dismiss people's idea, but just, sometimes it's better just to take a break
Mm-hmm.
and come back to it.
For
And
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
Especially when people are passionate about their ideas. Sometimes that passion can
Mm-hmm.
come through very aggressive. And so everyone is probably passionate about something, especially in our job. We're passionate about what we do for women veterans. So sometimes, when people,
Yeah.
you have to have confrontations about, well, why should there be a women veterans program or something like that? You're like, automatically you
Because
go
they're
into
supposed to be,
defense.
duh.
So, sometimes it can be very hard. But it's challenging. It can be challenging, but it can be done.
Yeah.
yeah,
I,
just
I think that's good. Yeah, yeah. Try not to be on the defense all the time. That's a good.
Right.
yeah. I think the other thing too is, and this isn't just men, well, this isn't just women, it's men too, but we all want to think that our ideas are
Oh,
the
yeah,
best ideas.
sure.
Of course.
And it takes practice. I've been there. I've been called on the table a couple of times about not giving others opportunities to speak, and I've learned from that. So, you know, it, it goes back to just being respectful, and don't try to make it all about you. You may have the best idea, but give other people a chance to share.
Yeah.
I agree.
Good tips. Okay, let's go to the next one. So now we're going to get into that public speaking. I wanted to give y'all a break. So practice, practice, practice. I already talked about that. Sorry about that last E being cut off. I like went straight to that. Oh, should have put that picture there. Again, practice, practice, practice. If you're going to do a presentation or a speech, especially if it's a big one, and we've all done the big one. At this table, we've all done some big speeches, presentations, panels, whatever. If you know what you're going to be presenting on, practice it. If you think about, okay, what are some questions that could be asked from this at the end, right? Because most of the time we get asked questions and you don't want to be up there thinking, oh crap, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. So try to think ahead and think, okay, here's my presentation, here's the topic, what are some questions that could come out of that?
Because I think that's a big, I'm going to say issue for a lot of people. That's a big fear for
It
a lot
is
of
a lot.
people.
It's
What
a
if somebody
big
asks me
fear.
a question I don't know the
Yes.
answer? So that is a good
Yeah.
idea.
And let's say you're up there, because we've done a lot of panels, right? And at panels, most of the time they end with Q&A. And there's been several times that one of us has had to say, you know what, I don't know the answer right off the top of my head. I will get back to you. There's nothing wrong with that. And you know what? Get their information and follow up. Get their email or get their phone number and follow up with an answer once you find it. I've had to do that before, especially in the employment realm. If somebody says, hey, what's the unemployment rate? Dang it, I didn't check that to make sure I had the most accurate one. So I'll say, okay, well, let me get your card and I'll email you when I get back to the office because I'm not quite sure. So were you going to add something, Carrie?
No, I was just saying that you see that at all levels.
Mm-hmm.
So,
oh, yeah.
I mean,
there's nothing wrong with it. It's much better to say, I don't know, I'll get back to you, than spout some crazy fact off
and then you
or give
look,
some crazy answer.
Then you
They'll
look
know.
incompetent.
Exactly.
Because they're going to find out.
Because they're going to find out.
And make sure you get back to them, in a
Reasonably.
timely manner, because you'll lose credibility like that too.
Again, going back to the powerful body language, this is really important for public speaking because now you're not going to be able to make eye contact with one person at a time. What I like to do is kind of what Anna was talking about when she was talking about presenting earlier is, okay, so let's say you're in a big room and 50 to 100 people, and you've got that space. And I like to walk around too, because if I'm behind the podium, I'll kind of close up a little bit. It's weird. But if I'm walking around, I'll use my hands a little more, and it's okay. Gives me a little more confidence. So what I do is I'll kind of scan the room. If you're in a smaller setting and maybe there's like 10 people, you'll be able to make eye contact with each of them. But if you're in a larger setting, just kind of make eye contact with a few over the room, maybe even look. Sometimes what I'll do is pick a point in the back that's low to where it looks like I'm looking at the people. If it's like a really big crowd, and really at the beginning when I would get nervous in presenting, I would kind of pick that spot to where it looked like I was looking at people, but I was like, I was not looking at anybody because I was still really nervous presenting. Eventually, the more you present, the more it'll go away, because now I'm completely comfortable. And I mean, the first time I presented, I always tell the story when I presented to the TCCVS Council for the first time. It's a lot of our commissioners and, you know, council members, and they're kind of some big wigs for our agency. And everybody said, "Oh, you did such a good job." And so I was walking back and I told the director, he was my boss at the time, I said, "I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick." And I went in there and I had seen spots and I thought I was going to pass out. So I sat down on the ground and I'm like, you know, like taking deep breaths and stuff, and it went away. And then there was probably, 30 people in that room. And last year I went to DC and presented in DC. You know, it comes and goes, but eventually you're going to get really comfortable, and you're going to think, what was I even nervous about? Why was I nervous back then? But it's okay, because it'll pass. I love the tip, ground your feet. I think that's an awesome tip. And I learned that when I did a communication skills. Kelly Moore taught us that. And I never really understood it until I took that class. I'd heard it before, but she explained it very well. And so she kind of showed us, and she would stand with both feet on the ground instead of shifting from one to the other, because a lot of us will do that, right? Especially women will stand on one side and then kind of shift to the other. But if you do that, there's something about it. If you stand with both feet planted and your back tall, you know, like standing tall, like you just feel more confident. So normally at this part in the class, when I do a workshop, I make people get up and do it. But I'm going to let y'all get off the hook this time. Having a strong voice, again, you know, as Anna said, there are people out there that are soft-spoken. Just make sure you practice so you're not so soft-spoken that you sound like you're scared and timid. You don't want your voice to be cracking because you're nervous. So practice it and get that a little bit louder, and it'll hopefully avoid that cracking or, you know, squeaking at the end. Always breathe, right? I'm pretty sure that's what I forgot to do at that TCCVS briefing. So I think I just forgot to breathe, which is so ridiculous because now we work with them all the time, but oh, I was so nervous. So here's some good tips for public speaking. I was trying to think. Oh, somebody asked me one time, and I thought I had put it in here today, but I didn't. Somebody asked me about the use of hands when speaking. I'm a hand user when I speak, whether it's presenting to a big crowd or I'm in a meeting or an interview. The best advice that I was ever given was to look like there's a box, right? So maybe like, I'm trying to think, how could we explain this to them because they can't see us? Maybe like a 2-foot block in front of you, like a box. And don't go outside of that. So you don't want your hands waving way in the air or way low or way out to the sides like this. You just want to kind of keep it within maybe like a 2-foot radius of a block in front of you. And there's nothing wrong with using hands. Because most of us, we do use our hands when we speak, and that's okay. Just try not to be like, "Hey, everybody," with their hands waving all crazy. Anything else to add on this?
I know that when I used to get my nails done, someone told me about this, that I would click my nails.
Oh, yeah.
Even when I was standing and walking and talking to the audience, I would click my nails on the table in front of me. Or, so watch, you know, some people say, and,
what did you say? I said all the time.
Blah, blah, blah.
Said blah, blah, blah. How many
and,
times?
And blah, blah, blah.
You know is a big one. I like you know. Too much.
Yeah, or just I mean, because people will actually pay attention to that more than what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you bring someone with you to watch you, then you can find out, then you can find out if there's anything like that while you're speaking and you can correct it.
Yes, that's a great point. Actually, the best interview advice I ever got myself and how I realized I didn't do eye contact was doing a recorded mock interview and then watching that recording later. And I was like, oh my gosh, my eye contact, nobody told me. And then after the Dress Right Dress seminar or webinar we did a couple weeks ago, I've listened to it like 3 times because I wanted to hear what I was doing. And that's how I said, oh, I do like you know a lot. But I wanted to hear what I was doing wrong. So if I could watch myself doing a presentation, that's the best thing you could do, because sometimes people don't want to tell you that stuff. They don't want to hurt your feelings. And I'm thinking, just tell me. I'd rather know for next time so I can improve.
Right.
Did you have something to add, Anna?
No, I think when you talk about using I think a lot of that comes from a lack of practice.
Exactly.
So I think that's very important. Practice, practice, practice. It'll help eliminate the ums and the uhs. The other thing I would say is if you are with someone, if somebody is with you when you're presenting, if you've got a colleague with you or a peer with you who is familiar with what you are speaking of, and you get a question that you can't answer, as long as you and that colleague have made the agreement that they can assist you if a question comes up, then leverage the knowledge that's with you. So when I went to my speaking event, I've been with TBC since February, so I'm learning something new every day. And I was fortunate that I had Pam Merkline, who's our healthcare liaison and my director with me. So they were able to help with some of those questions. And there's nothing wrong with that. Being able to provide information, as long as it's the right information, is always good. So I just think if you've got somebody with you and they know what you're talking about, and you guys have agreed to it, then leverage their expertise as well.
Oh,
Absolutely.
definitely, yeah. I mean, especially if you're like on a panel or something, you could say, I'm not sure, Pam, do you know? Or, Mr. Palladino, do you know that answer to that question? And if they still don't know, then okay, you know what? I'll get your card and I'll get back to you once we get back to the office. The last tip that I want to leave you with on public speaking with confidence is, so a lot of us have some type of or symptom or nervous tic or whatever when we get a little flushed or scared or mad. Something happens to your body. Like for me, I used to get really splotchy on my neck. Oh man, people would know if I was either really mad or really scared because I get very splotchy. Some people's ears get red. Some people, if you're in an interview and you're nervous or you're doing a presentation, your hands may sweat. The best advice that I can give on that, because this was something I battled forever, because mine was a very obvious sign, right? I have, my neck is, you can't cover your neck unless you wear a scarf. So I would be so paranoid and self-conscious about it. But the best advice I have to give to that is just to forget about it. Because if you stop thinking about it and forget about it, it will go away, I promise. The more you think about it, the more you're going to psych yourself out and you're going to make it worse. So at that time, when that would happen to me, if I would have just let it go, it probably would have only been read for like a couple minutes versus the whole presentation, because I was getting paranoid and thinking about it and making myself flush even more. So that is normal. Most people have some kind of nervous tic, or I don't even know what you would really call it, but just the signs of being flushed or nervous or mad. So just keep that in mind. Okay, going to next slide. This is always a fun one. PC is the key. Woo! When I'm talking about PC, I'm talking about politically correct. So in a job like ours, we work for a government agency. It's nothing to have commissioners come through our office, to have legislators walk through, to be across the street at the Capitol while people are testifying. We have a lot of, I like to call them fancy people walking around. And you never know who's around you. I don't know how most people's office setup is, but I mean, the majority of us work in cubes, so cubicles, and if you say something, it's out there for everybody to hear. You don't know if your boss is walking by. You don't know if somebody you may offend somebody. You don't know if maybe there's a politician in the office and they didn't announce it. And if you say something, you need to be aware that other people are going to be able to hear what you're saying. So be aware of what is coming out of your mouth, because you never know who's listening. The little trick that I do, when I am at home, I'm a lot different than I am at work. I mean, personality-wise, it's about the same, but my grammar, I'm a lot more professional at work, because what I do is I switch it on and switch it off. So when I come to the office, as soon as I like step out of my car from the parking lot, I switch it off. I'm like, okay, this is my work face. I'll leave my play face at home. And then when I get back into my car, then I can relax. So if for me, one of the things that I have trouble with is, and these girls can attest to it, is, I like to cuss. I was a maintainer for 6 years. I like to be loud and joke around and maybe say funny, maybe borderline inappropriate jokes. But I would never do that when I'm in my professional setting, in my professional environment. There's a time and a place for it. So make sure when you get into the office, you switch it on, switch it off, whatever you want to call it. But you want to make sure you've got your professional face on. I don't know if that helps anybody, but for me, anybody that hangs out with me off duty, I mean, I'm completely very laid back, cuss like a sailor. Carrie's a sailor, so she probably cusses. So just remember, especially when you're in the office and depending on where you work, PC is the key. Always try to be politically correct, because you never know who you may offend or make mad. You never know who may be listening. So just pretend like somebody is always listening at every moment, and you'll be all right. Okay, and I think, so this is pretty much the last slide, just some key points to leave you with today, and these are kind of going over everything. Being too direct can come across as rude or abrasive. We already talked about that, and that's face-to-face communication or email or even phone. People can't, when you're on the phone, people can't see your face. You may be smiling, but if your tone's a little more direct, then they may not understand that you're not trying to be mean. Leave your rank behind you. Carrie mentioned rank earlier, so I always like to put this one in here, because if you retired after 26 years and you maybe were, I don't know, full bird, I mean, you have that rank with you, but when you get out of the military, you have to understand that people in the civilian world don't understand that. So they're not going to treat you the same way, like you had mentioned earlier. You may have been a chief, you may have been barking orders to people in the military, but you come out of the military, you're not a chief anymore. So you need to be careful not to come across, because if you start keeping that, and I'm not picking on chiefs, but I'm just using it as an example, if you use that chief mentality and you're telling people what to do, but you're just a coordinator or something, people are going to be like, who the heck are you? Especially now in our agency, most people know what most people's rank was. So we kind of keep a little bit of that here. And we'll say, oh, hey, Major, or hey, Lieutenant Colonel, because we understand and we respect that, but that's not the norm out there. Normally, civilians don't understand what that means.
And they don't care.
And they don't care. I mean, it's sad to say, but it's true. Most of them don't care. So leave your rank behind you.
They most respect it, but they don't.
What I tried to tell my husband, because most of them know he was a combat vet and he deployed, I said, they respect that you were in the military and you deployed, but they don't care. Like after that, they don't really want to hear anything else about it. They're like, hey, that was really cool that you did that. Thanks for serving. I'm good. I don't need to know anything else. So I tried to explain that to him when he got so mad about the school example. So again, leave your rank behind you, especially if you're starting at the bottom of the totem pole. Don't be barking orders. If you're an entry-level position, you're gonna get a reputation very, very quickly. Keep emotion out of the picture. We talked about that already. Try not to get too worked up or too upset, because you don't want that to reflect in your reputation. Do not be afraid to confront. Just be respectful and tactful. It's okay if you have something you want to say it. Just do it in a courteous way. And then if you have something to say, but if you know it's completely ridiculous, then maybe you don't need to say that. Know your audience and know if it's even relevant. Maybe something's just making you mad. Don't worry about addressing it if it's not relevant to being what you need to do at your office. This is a big one too, and a lot of people have trouble with it. Accept constructive criticism and use it to better yourself. So Anna kind of touched on it a little bit when she said that she would take things and use it and she learned from that, and she would make herself better. So if somebody tells you something like, hey, you know what, you kind of overrun people at meetings a little bit, let's give some other people a chance to talk, take that as constructive criticism. Don't get upset about it. Don't get on the defense. Use that to make yourself better, and think, oh, wow, you know what? I kind of do that. I didn't mean to do that. Just stop from that point forward and use that to make yourself better from then on. Fake it till you make it. You could be the most unconfident person in the world, but if you're acting confident, nobody's going to know. Nobody will ever know. And lastly, for me, take a deep breath. No matter what the situation is, just kind of breathe and take a deep breath, whether you're going to present or you're about to, go in there and confront your boss or an employee or whatever, and just breathe. Do y'all have anything else to add?
I'll add one thing to the fake it till you make it comment. So one thing to remember is that, especially if you've been asked to speak on a subject, you're being asked because you are the one who knows the information. So feel confident in that, right? They don't know. They're only going to know what you share with them. You're the expert. Own it.
Own it.
Own it. I love it. Own it. Carrie, any final comments?
No final comments.
If anybody has any questions, we still have a few minutes to type them in.
In the meantime, if you're thinking about your comments,
there we go.
Don't forget to tune in to our next upcoming webinar, which is Tuesday, and that's prosthetics diversity. So we're going to talk about what are prosthetics, what's available to you. Are there prosthetics for women in the VA specifically? How to get prosthetics, and you'd be amazed at what counts as a prosthetic. So if you'd like to register for that, you can go to our website at tvc.texas.gov under virtual coffee, and you can register for that. And I will also send you, please fill out the feedback survey that you'll receive right after this webinar. It helps us get better each and every time. And if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and close it out.
Yep, and this last slide has our contact information. So if you have any questions about any of the information we covered today or anything, please give us an email or a call. We're here to help you, and even if you don't need the information yourself, it's always good to attend these webinars because you may know somebody who needs the information. Let's say like the one Carrie's talking about, that's from the healthcare series, so it's not employment related, but you may work with veterans or you may know veterans who may need some prosthetic information. And if you attend that webinar, then you will have all the answers. Oh,
That's
yeah,
right.
all of them.
All right. Thank you again. Make sure you fill out the survey and help us get better. And have a great day.